Chapter 41. Lunatic Pandora. The lunatic Pandora was still floating over Tears Point. Floating high off of the ground like it was far out of the reach of the monster rain it had brought down upon the planet. It was too big to be challenged and too far away from anything below for any normal vehicle to attempt to enter. Only with the flying Ragnarok was it possible. As they came in on approach, everyone took their places. Selfie at the pilot controls, Quistis on the arms and weapons. Zell was leading up navigation and backup controls. Irvine was standing behind Selfie, beaming in excitement. Rinoa had perched at the communication seat. She flipped the switch for the intercom, allowing Laguna and the others down below to hear.
"Here we go!"
Zell laughed loudly.
"We're busting in there. I hope we can get through."
Quistis frowned at the strange material that made up the walls of the Pandora.
Don't worry about it,"
Irvine grinned.
"Waiting on your orders, Commander." "Weapons check."
Squall looked to Quistis.
"Machine guns and main cannon online,"
Quistis assured with a smile.
"Ready to fire on your order. Just fire like crazy."
Selfie laughed.
"Make a big hole. Boom." "Go, Selfie,"
Squall ordered, voice calm but face blazing. "Focused. Commander Leonhardt." Laughing like a maniac, Selfie launched the Ragnarok forward, aiming for the dead center with a hungry look on her face. Like she was having the time of her life. The ship rocked and stalled when they hit something like a wall. Squall caught himself before he fell as Irvine looked out the window to the magic barrier they were fighting against.
"Shields!"
he called back.
"Selfie, turbo!"
Squall ordered.
"Woohoo!"
Selfie hollered, slamming her hand on the button. The afterburners kicked on and the ship began grinding across the barrier. Slowly. Then they stopped and stalled. Damn! It wasn't working. They were going to be forced back out.
"Rinoa!"
Squall looked at her.
"Break it down."
"Hey!" Rinoa jumped, surprised to be addressed. Then nodded as her own training took over and she jumped to her feet.
"Right."
Looking the window, she screwed up her face in concentration. She reached up, pushing her magic out of the ship and into the barrier. She didn't need to destroy it, she just needed to open a hole big enough for the Ragnarok to fit through. Slowly, groaning at the strain it was putting on the hull, the Ragnarok began bursting through the barrier. The dragon head. Then the guns. The second those cleared the barrier, Squall yelled towards Quistis.
"Fire machine guns!"
Quistis's thumb jerked down on the button. The ship didn't even rock as a volley of shots burst out and slammed into the side of the Pandora. Large chunks of the strange rock broke off. No complete hole.
"We're through,"
Rinoa announced as they jerked free of the barrier.
"Fire main cannon!"
Quistis slammed her hand down onto the large button on her console. The biggest gun on the bottom of the dragon head drew in power. Charging for a second. Boom. The hole the blast carved into the Pandora was more than large enough for the Ragnarok. Selfie pulled up close. There was no real place for them to land, so.
"Deploy the arms. Lock us in place,"
Squall ordered. Quistis pushed back the weapons controls and grabbed for the arm controls. Rinoa watched with wide, impressed eyes as first one hand came up over the window, then the other. They slammed down into the rocky ground, the spiked fingers locking the ship in place, even hanging halfway out of the Pandora like it was.
Good work,
Squall nodded at them as the ship settled into place. Humming, rocking in the pilot's seat, Selfie looked like she was coming down from the best orgasm of her life. She let out a sigh of delight.
That was so great. Can we do it again from the other side?
Squall rolled his eyes.
All right, Zell, deploy the front landing gear. We'll jump out from there. Rinoa, Zell, you're with me. Quistis, you've got the second team. You three secure this location, then escort the president out after us. You're his guard, got it? Yes, sir,
Quistis nodded.
No mistakes, people,
Squall said, moving to the lift. Rinoa and Zell were right behind him. At the bottom of the lift, Laguna was standing in the door of the launch chamber. Squall looked at him once before deliberately turning away.
President Lawyer, it's best if you stay here until the area is cleared. Of course,
Laguna nodded and watched as Squall led the others down and out through the hangar. He knew that Squall wouldn't want to hear it now, so he waited until the door was closed.
Be safe.
They didn't get far outside of the airship. As Squall was helping Rinoa down off of the rubble pile the Ragnarok had created, they heard voices calling out from the other end of the large room.
Big sound, this way. It's probably them, you know. Them? No. Impossible.
Zell frowned back at Squall.
Hey, doesn't that sound like...
The three of them stepped forward as Fujin and Raijin ran down the steps towards them. Raijin called out like he was shocked as they stopped before the seeds.
It is Squall, you know.
He pointed to him, laughing at Fujin. She didn't join in.
Shock,
Fujin tilted her head quite calmly. She reached back for her weapon.
Good. Convenient. That's right,
Raijin grinned wickedly.
Hand over Rinoa, you know. No.
Squall snapped, stepping before her. Rinoa smiled at him, at how protective he got.
I'll never hand over Rinoa. And we're taking Elone back. I won't let you resurrect Adele, either.
Raijin pouted, slumping over.
You're greedy, you know. Not fair, you know. Persuasion, useless,
Fujin tossed back her hair. She pointed at Rinoa.
Seize.
Raijin laughed.
Sorry, man. I don't fight girls. Fu, you get her. I'll take out Squall and Zell. Wimp,
Fujin glared at him. Raijin jerked his staff off of his back, grinning.
Been waiting to fight you again, you know. Can't say I've felt the same,
Squall said calmly, stepping forward.
I have though,
Zell smirked.
Let's do this, right?
Squall didn't get a chance to draw his weapon. Allowing Zell to run forward and take Raijin on, Squall glanced over to where Fujin was approaching Rinoa. The one-eyed woman was looking at her shrewdly. Rinoa was aiming her new shooting star as she came in closer.
Surrender,
Fujin said calmly.
Stay out of our way,
Rinoa warned, her beautiful face fierce. Squall looked between the two fights quite calmly. He didn't need to interfere. He stood there observing the way both of them were fighting. Rather proud. Zell had always been a superior fighter. It was, in fact, the only reason he had passed his SEAD exam at all. While Squall would hardly call him incredibly more professional than he had been, his fighting skills had only improved with time. VIII was an excellent fighter himself. He always had been. But while VIII had been following Cypher, commanding an army, Zell had been fighting. It looked like it surprised both men how much faster Zell was now. Each strike from VIII's staff was easily blocked by the hard knuckles of Zell's air guys. Zell started smiling as he realized that it was far easier than it had been last time to fight against VIII. So easy, in fact, that he was able to start punching in between deflecting blows. VIII was grunting in pain. In effort. Zell was laughing as his fists broke out into flames. It took no more than a thought to summon the fire now. It didn't take long for VIII to be put completely on the defensive. He was taking quick steps back, trying to avoid Zell's blows. Zell punched for his face and the flames burned his eyes. VIII snapped them shut, reeling backward with a cry of pain. Zell punched for his chest. VIII went flying, his body smoking. His staff skittered away from him and Zell stood with a grin, smoke coming from his nostrils as a shiver of delight ran down his spine. He loved the feeling of raw power it brought him. VIII and Rinoa were clashing their aerial weapons together. VIII's chakram versus Rinoa's edge. The two women were being careful to stay away from each other, trying to conquer the other with accuracy and shot strength. Rinoa's star worked by magnetic technology and was assisted by her own magic. VIII was a master at using her chakram that had trained for years to use it. Rinoa may not have been training for years, but she had been trained by the best. First by Squall, by a specialist blaster edge teacher. She was smart, brave, and determined. It was an absolute joy to watch the graceful, almost dancer-like, way she moved to avoid the chakram. More than that, it made Squall feel fierce pride and desire to see her fight. From a scared girl who tried to hide behind his jacket to a skilled warrior standing her own against a seed-trained she-demon who once disciplined mercenaries. Rinoa launched the shooting star. VIII dodged easily. Rinoa reached out and took hold of the star with her magic. Growling, she jerked it back. Unprepared for the sudden change in trajectory, VIII was struck in the back. Blood splattered across the ground but Rinoa jerked her hand up, pulling the star away before it could kill her. VIII still collapsed down, gritting her teeth against the pain. Rinoa caught her star and Squall walked up beside her. He hadn't even drawn his gun blade. He looked between the two downed former cadets calmly. Panting, VIII moved in closer to VIII and helped her up.
I don't want to kill either of you,
Squall told them easily.
I will if you force my hand, but for our own past, I recommend you retreat now.
VIII glared at him, clinging on to VIII because she couldn't stand on her own. VIII nodded, accepting his clemency.
Retreat?
VIII growled.
Temporary. All right.
Panting, VIII pulled her back.
We're not through yet, you know.
Squall said nothing and let the two of them escape. Rinoa watched his face as they left. She let out a breath.
Do you regret it? Not killing them? No, I don't. No, I mean...
Rinoa frowned, looking after them herself.
They were with you at Garden, right? You guys kind of grew up together. I can't say that I have many pleasant memories of them,
Squall shrugged.
You don't have many pleasant memories of Cypher either, and I know you regret what's happened to him. That's different. How?
She tilted her head curiously. Squall shook his head, trying to think of how to phrase himself.
Cypher. He's different now. He's changed a lot from how I remember him. Those two? No, they're doing exactly what they want. I kind of respect them for it.
Rinoa smiled.
Even when you're fighting for opposing things.
Squall shrugged.
If circumstances were different, I might be them. And what circumstances could possibly change that you would be in their position?
She laughed in disbelief.
You could be the one wanting to conquer the world.
Squall looked at her quite seriously.
Of course, I wouldn't be failing you like those two are, Cypher. The world would already be yours by now.
Rinoa bit her lip.
It's so sexy when you talk like that. Seriously?
Zell cried loudly, looking at her in confusion.
How is that possibly attractive to you?
Rinoa laughed, not bothering to explain that she loved the idea that he was so loyal to her. That he would do anything for her. She was never going to try to conquer the world, of course. But it was nice to know that if she wanted to, she would have a loyal knight helping her. Squall grinned her way. She didn't need to say it. He could hear it through their bond.
Let's get going,
Squall said, jerking his head towards the exit Fujin and Raijin had taken. As they moved up, they spotted two Galbadian soldiers talking at the end of the path. One in blue, one in red. They were talking rather loudly, angrily, making it easy to hear them as they came in close.
Why the heck do I have to take orders from some punk kid?
The angry red one asked.
Well, he is our superior,
the calmer blue one said simply. He didn't sound all that happy about it either, but there was resignation in his tone. Zell frowned, recognizing the voices.
Don't you think I know that?
The red one snapped.
I chose the wrong career. Demotions are handed out like candy. No one ever listens to me. I'm listening, sir. And now I have to take orders from a punk who's young enough to be my own son.
The blue one laughed.
That's pretty funny. If it irks you that much, why don't you just quit and find another career, sir?
The red one's back suddenly straightened, his mouth falling open. The blue one laughed again.
I'm just kidding, sir. It's a joke. You're right. You're absolutely right. I quit.
The blue one looked at him, confused.
Wedge.
Biggs grinned triumphantly.
Let's go home and have a drink. Oh what? Me, too. Of course. Now, come on.
Laughing, like he might have just discovered the secrets of the universe and gained enlightenment, Biggs started walking away. He nodded at Squall as he passed, whistling merrily. He wasn't afraid of them. He quit, he wasn't Seed's enemy any longer. And Squall let them pass unmolested for just that reason.
But...
Wedge stood there, mouth gaping, unsure what to do.
Oh. All right.
Shaking his head, he walked after his so. He nodded as he passed them. Then grinned.
Hey, Zell. How's it going, man?
Zell high-fived him as he passed like that was a completely normal thing to do. Squall and Rinoa stared at him as the two walked away.
What?
He asked innocently, shrugging.
He's cool.
Squall rolled his eyes as Rinoa laughed.
Let's just go,
he said. The two followed him up the staircase to their left and into the Pandora. Zell had been through here once in his failed attempt at stopping it early. Squall had been through here once as Laguna. Things had changed since then in a strange way. Almost like everything, from the walls to the doors, had all been knocked on their sides. Between the two of them though, they were able to navigate their way through the labyrinth of crystal corridors.
This place is creepy,
Rinoa frowned at the glowing walls. The way her footsteps echoed was just as eerie as her own distorted reflection.
What is this stuff anyway? Odin called it moon crystal,
Zell told her as they ran through.
He said that this crystal stuff is what calls the monsters from the moon. He doesn't know how it works though. Laguna made him dump it in the ocean before he could work that out. He's, kind of bitter about it. Who cares?
Squall frowned as they stepped through a doorway into clear orange tunnels. These weren't crystalline at all.
We just need to dump it right back there. Destroy it outright if we can. Hey, Squall.
Zell frowned as they moved down the tunnel.
I should probably warn you. Me, Selfie, and Irvine made it just past here before we found this thing.
He didn't get to finish. As they were running through the other door at the far end of the tunnel, they came out onto a familiar metal pathway. Raijin and Fujin were standing there. Fujin was still bleeding, she didn't have any cure spells to use on herself. Raijin jumped when they came through. It had taken them less time to catch up than they though.
We meet again, you know.
He growled, reaching for his weapon.
I ain't scared. We'll take you on, you know. No.
Fujin held out her hand, stopping him. The two of them were backing up slowly to the double doors just behind them.
No fight. Next time.
Raijin looked up and laughed.
That's right. We have a surprise, you know. Ah, shit.
Zell growled.
Rinoa. Lock us down. What?
She looked confused. The giant robot that had evicted them so easily before crashed down onto the walkway. Rinoa heard Diablo's cry a warning just in time. She reached out quickly, increasing gravity on Squall and Zell even as the machine tried to jerk them up. Squall and Zell both grimaced as the two opposing forces worked on each other, cancelling one another out and leaving them as they stood but creating an oddly dissonant feeling in their bones. There was no attempt to evict Rinoa. They wanted her to stay. The machine rumbled as its anti-gravity generator fought against Rinoa's gravity magic. A machine was no match for a blood and flesh sorceress. Something in the back of the machine started smoking and sparking as the anti-gravity generator broke. Rinoa released Zell and Squall as the machine beeped and hummed threateningly. The silver and turquoise machine gleamed dangerously. Just another one of Galbadia's mechanical creations intended to stop them. Squall had to admit that this one was considerably more slick and effective than the last if it had stopped Zell before he could touch it. That anti-gravity machine was the best shot it had. The lasers it shot afterwards were large, easy to dodge, and the machine itself easy to take down. Mostly, with its annoying habit of shooting wildly and a whipping tail coming from its base, it was just time-consuming. By the time Zell had punched his way through the hull and Rinoa had fried the electrical components with a blast of lightning, Fujin and Raijin had already retreated beyond the doors. The machine crashed down off of the walkway, falling below them to the base of the Pandora. Squall still hadn't needed to draw his new gunblade. Their power-ups, their experience, the GFs energizing their limbs with their new, powerful magic made this too easy. In only moments, Squall stepped through the double doors, his gaze cold and piercing. Cypher was standing on top of a raised dais with circular stairs leading up to him. Taller than everyone, looking down with a smug smile. His coat was ragged and torn. His eyes were sunken, his skin pale. It looked like he hadn't been doing anything more than strictly necessary to keep himself alive and functioning. The hungry look in his eyes was mad and manic now. Standing below him and the dais, Fujin and Raijin were there. Raijin had his weapon out. Fujin was holding on to Elon, who gasped upon seeing him. She looked tired and hungry, but she wasn't hurt. Squall nodded to her before turning up to Cypher. He grinned down at Squall. Happy he was here. Happy to fight him. Hyperion was at his side, dull even in the bright light. Cypher had been taking as good care of the blade as he had himself.
We've come to take back Elon,
Squall said simply, lowering his hand to the hilt of his gunblade.
Looks like we got company,
Cypher smirked at his friends.
Show him your hospitality.
Raijin nodded, his jaw tightening, as he stalked forward. Zell lifted his fists. Fujin hesitated. Then.
Raijin, stop.
Raijin let out a sigh that could only be described as relief. His shoulders slumped as he turned back to Fujin. The two of them nodded, coming to a silent agreement. Cypher frowned at them.
What's up?
He asked, smiling calmly. Raijin shook his head. He suddenly looked exhausted.
We've had enough, you know.
Fujin released Elon's arms and jerked her head.
Go.
The other girl didn't need more permission. Though it was difficult in her white pencil skirt, Elon ran quickly towards Squall. He reached out and took her shoulder. Checking once to assure himself that she was okay, he nodded, satisfied.
Wait outside. Laguna will be here soon with the others.
Thank you, Elon said breathlessly before running from the room. Squall stepped deliberately between her and Cypher, though she was far from him now.
Hey, hey.
Cypher looked at his friends like they had lost their minds.
Come on, people. Have you forgotten your role here?
Raijin shook his head.
Cypher, we're quittin', you know? Don't know what's right anymore, you know. Exactly my thoughts. I thought we were a posse.
Cypher actually looked hurt at their betrayal. Maybe there was something that could break through the spell the sorceress had over him.
Posse?
Fujin looked up to him. She let out a long breath. She bit her lips, grabbing for her elbows in a helpless move Squall had never seen from her before.
Cypher. We are,
she said softly, shocking Squall and the others. Cypher frowned at the sound of her normal voice. Only Raijin didn't seem confused.
We always will be,
she continued, taking in a deep breath.
It's because we're a posse that we're doing this. We want to help you. Whatever it takes to fulfill your dreams, we're willing to do. But you're being manipulated, Cypher. You've lost yourself, and your dream. You're just eating out of someone's hand now. This isn't you anymore. We want the old you back. And since we can't get through to you, all we have now to rely on is Squall. It's sad. Sad that we only have Squall to rely on.
Swallowing, Fujin looked up and faced him head-on.
Cypher. Are you still gonna keep going down this destructive path?
Cypher shrugged at her as if to say, what are you gonna do? Grinning, he lifted his blade and saluted them with it respectfully.
Raijin, Fujin. It's been fun.
Fujin let out a long breath of disappointment. Neither she nor Raijin attempted to fight Squall, but nor did they attempt to stop Cypher. They couldn't attack him. They turned and started to leave. Fujin nodded to Squall on the way.
"We have only you left,"
she said sadly.
"Bring back our Cypher,"
Raijin added just as solemnly. Squall nodded and the two of them walked from the room. Squall stepped forward.
"Are you gonna continue with this night thing?"
he asked calmly.
"The night has retired,"
Cypher grinned. Stepping forward, he dropped off of the dais and landed neatly on his feet. He stood and kept coming closer.
"I guess you could call me a young revolutionary." "What do you think you're doing?"
Squall growled at him.
"Do you even understand the implications of this mad scheme you're part of?" "You know me,"
Cypher laughed.
"I've always gotta be doing something big." "This isn't you, Cypher. She's warped your brain. You have to stop this." "I don't wanna stop."
Cypher laughed loudly. Madly.
"I'm gonna keep running. I've come this far. I'm gonna keep going until I make it to the end. To the goal. And there's no way that I'm sharing it with you."
Cypher charged in a berserk rage. Squall barely pulled his lion heart out in time to catch the Hyperion's metal blade before it took his head. Steel rang against adamantine and Cypher's eyes went wide at the clear, blue-tinged gun blade material. Squall's teeth clenched. But it was easy to hold off Cypher. The lion heart was heavy and Cypher's own lack of upkeep made him weaker. Slicing out, Squall threw Cypher back easily. He flipped over, landing on his feet and glaring with bared teeth.
"An adamantine blade? Squall, when did you become so flashy?"
Cypher was laughing as he got to his feet. Squall held on to his lion heart confidently. He didn't mind the flashiness, not considering how much power he got in return.
"I don't want to fight you, Cypher. I've settled my grudge with you already." "Chickening out."
Cypher laughed wildly. The insult rolled off of Squall, not even touching him.
"You're no match for me any longer. Stand down and let us help."
Cypher's eye twitched at the response. Why wasn't Squall rising to the challenge? He always rose to the challenge. He had to rise to the challenge.
"Show me what you got, Squall. Let me add another scar to that pretty face of yours."
Cypher charged. Squall caught his attack easily. And the next. And the next. It was a simple matter for him now. He realized now that Zell and Rinoa weren't the only ones to grow and change. Fighting Cypher used to be a challenge. Now it was sadly similar to sparring with the underclassmen. Squall held his defense, not even trying to attack. Cypher's wild and energetic strikes had that unpolished, messy quality that the untrained young cadets have when wielding a blade for the first time. Cypher had lost his edge. Squall didn't even want to try to attack him like this.
"Fight me!"
Spittle flecked against Cypher's lips as he continued charging. He started panting, sweating as Squall knocked each strike away like they were bugs coming for his face. The calm expression, the easy manner with which he deflected annoyed Cypher. It was like Squall wasn't even trying. Which infuriated him. Who was he to pretend that Cypher wasn't a challenge? They were rivals. The ultimate force that drove the other. Squall was no better than him. Cypher was the hero of this story. He was going to win.
"Give Rinoa to me!"
Cypher yelled, nearly foaming at the mouth.
Rinoa is mine.
Squall's eyes flashed.
Surrender and get help, Cypher. Yours.
Cypher laughed.
Her power belongs to Ultimecia. What? Don't tell me.
Stopping, Cypher threw back his head and started crying with laughter.
Don't tell me that you really think you're her knight. An evil mercenary like you. Bloodbringer. Death dealer. Do you think you can be a sorceress's knight? Knight, lapdog, bootlicker,
Squall shrugged, uncaring.
I'll be whatever she wants of me. But at least I'm doing it of my own free will. You're nothing more than a puppet, Cypher.
Cypher glared, madness flaring in his eyes.
I am a dreamer. I will change this world. You're a shell,
Squall corrected.
You're going to kill yourself.
Crying out, Cypher charged once more. Squall sidestepped, slicing his heart up into the side. Not enough to kill, just enough to injure. Cypher coughed and collapsed behind him, blood trickling from his chest. Squall let out a breath and let his eyes close. Cypher wasn't dead. At least not physically. Squall still felt like he was mourning. His partner. His rival. His brother. Rinoa sighed behind Cypher, frowning at the sight he made on the floor. Tattered jacket, messy hair, broken body. He was nothing like the confident, vibrant man that had once escorted her from Galbadia to Timber. But she had already mourned his loss. She could just shake her head.
Cypher.
Her voice failed. She wished she could say something. She didn't know what. With nothing else coming to mind, she turned to leave. She was going to go check on Elone. To stay with her until the others arrived. Someone had to explain the plan to her.
You all right, Squall?
Zell asked, stepping past Cypher.
I'm fine,
Squall assured him, sheathing his lion heart.
Come on, we still need to find Adele and...
Squall. The two of them turned quickly. There was a blood streak where Cypher had been. He had jumped up while their backs were turned and he had chased after.
Rinoa.
Squall sprinted outside. They ran outside to find Cypher having caught Rinoa in a choker hold as he moved up the stair ladder on the side of the walkway. He had Hyperion cutting across her abdomen, his arm into her neck, not quite drawing blood but being dangerously close to doing so.
Not yet, Squall.
Cypher laughed.
It's not over yet.
Rinoa squeaked, reaching out for him. Squall cried out her name, chasing her up the stairs. She was scared to attack Cypher, afraid that if he fell from this height she would fall with him. Sorceresses were only human, after all.
Stay back, Squall,
Cypher laughed, moving the Hyperion closer to Rinoa's heart.
If you don't want her blood running down the walls, stay back.
Squall stopped like Cypher had hit his pause button. He swallowed convulsively as the two of them started moving out of sight.
Squall.
Quistis, leading the others including Laguna, ran into the room.
Is that Cypher with Rinoa?
Squall stood still for only a moment, letting him enter the room above. Out of sight so he didn't see Squall chasing after them. Squall sprinted up the steep stairs the moment he was gone. He heard the others follow behind him. Rinoa's fear and desperation for him was breaking through their bond. It was driving Squall mad to feel her panic. He had to get her back. He had to get her back. Rinoa was breathing fast. Her mind was moving faster. Cypher's hand was heavy on her shoulder, sweaty and almost shaking a little bit. She could feel his panicked breath on her ear as he pushed her closer to the glowing, warm orb that was Adele's tomb. Rinoa felt a chill go down her spine at the sight. Adele wasn't awake yet, but she looked very different from the last time Rinoa saw her up in space. Her skin was brighter. Her chest was moving within the clear wrap that contained her. Breathing. Awakening.
Cypher, stop it,
Rinoa begged softly.
This isn't you. What's wrong?
He asked, smiling at Adele but speaking to Rinoa.
Can't stand my touch anymore? Do you prefer Squall that much? He's not much better than me. Do you know how many Galbadians he's killed? I know what he is. I don't care. And I know what you are. You aren't this person. I know that this isn't you. You've done enough. Just stop. I can't stop.
Cypher shook his head wildly.
Can't go back now. I can't go anywhere.
Cypher was twitching wildly now. His eyes were wide, inhuman. The sorceress had her claws deep in his brain. Twisting him. Warping him.
The sorceress is as one.
Cypher yelled.
That is Ultimecia's wish. Adele. Awaken to your new master. Cypher.
Rinoa gasped. Adele's gleaming red eyes snapped open. End of chapter.